welcome to today's PGC Ticket episode. I'm Toby, joined by Martin, and today we'll be talking about Virtus.pro.
And as you can see here, Virtus.pro, they obviously won PCS 5, which guaranteed them a spot for PGC, but it didn't matter because they already had that many points that they were already guaranteed to go, even if they didn't do very well at PCS 5 anyway.
So Martin, what do you think are some of the strengths of Virtus.pro?
So obviously Virtus.pro is a team that has BatulinS as their in-game leader, and he has insane team knowledge and map knowledge as well. And their presence and their ability to get into late game Fall Guys alive and also converting those late game positioning into wins is just insane.
Exactly, and I think a lot of what comes down to it, I mean, we see BatulinS in particular, the mountain goat, getting, especially on Miramar, getting up on top of all the mountains. Their scouting abilities and knowing, I mean, it's a combination of all, right? Knowing where the opponents are, doing your prep work, right? And also never taking anything for granted. They make sure if we go to this building, we scout it first. We make sure it's clear for us to take before we go there. So they rarely ever risk taking casualties early on. And as you said, once they get full late game, practically unstoppable.
So we talked about the strengths of Virtus.pro. Let's talk about some of the weaknesses. What do you think that the weaknesses from Virtus.pro is going into PGC?
I think something that could potentially come to bite them is actually something that comes off of one of their strengths, that they are so good at doing so much homework on their opponents. We have seen it in the past when we get to these global events that all of a sudden the table is completely flipped upside down, and since Virtus.pro is a team that pretty heavily relies on all the homework that they do, if we go into at least the beginning of PGC, where teams that would usually be the passive ones try to go aggressive to stir the pot, or teams that would usually be aggressive try to slow things down, that could maybe catch a team like Virtus.pro off guard. So relying heavily on what they are used to seeing from the team could be a dangerous factor in this game.
I think so too. It can be extremely hard to prepare against this many teams from this many different regions. And I think a lot of random factors can potentially hurt them as well here.
Okay, so now Martin, I think I know what you're gonna say, but I still want to hear from you. What do you think Virtus.pro's chances are at PGC?
Yeah, so obviously I think they're the biggest hope from our region, EMEA, and I'm a little bit afraid because they have so much pressure on their shoulders. True. They, at PGIS, it was their coach that subbed in for them this time. They're all 4 players, and their expectations from, I think, globally is extremely high. And I think that could potentially be a little bit too much pressure, but I'm really hoping that they're going to do extremely well. So I'm personally looking at a top 4 from them from this event.
I would assume so too. I mean, again, we talked a little about their weakness in how maybe they can get caught off guard early, but they're still one of the best adapting teams. So sure, even if they come off to a tough start, there's so much potential. I mean, we know they can win games. That means you're pretty much always through to the finals.
Right.
They win the first game of every week all the time. So you're pretty much through to the weekly finals every single time, and that alone should be you getting a good spot for the grand final. So I think, I mean, their chances are as good as any's, if not better than pretty much everyone within the EMEA. Last but not least, Martin, what was your favorite Virtus.pro moment of 2021?
It's honestly hard because they had so many amazing times. You know, they won PCS 4, they won ESL Summer. And going into PCS 5, they had a pretty decent run, and week 2 was pretty rough for them, but then they just, ran in, won the very last game of PCS 5, crowning them the kings of EMEA. And, that's just something that's hard to forget.
I hope you enjoyed watching this episode of PGC Ticket, and I hope you got to learn a little bit more about Virtus.pro. So make sure to tune in on November 19th for day 1 of PGC 2021.